Hey. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Epidose of these crazy guys who just eat meat all the time and can't shut up about it and how much we like to talk about meat. Well, one of the things you might want to have around if you eat a lot of meat is a sharp knife. I'm just saying. So I have enlisted the help of my good friend, Chef Zumbo, or Mr. Zippo, as I like to call him. So we're going to talk a little bit about knives. Just kind of, get everybody used to the idea of how to sharpen one and just some basics you need to know. So why don't you tell us a little bit about kitchen knives there, Chef Zupo?
Cool. Hey guys. So as a chef, I typically have my professional set of knives, and then I've got some that, we keep around the house here that aren't it's a different kind of steel, and they're much easier to sharpen. So I've got my little collection here. I'm just going to show you my knives. So look, they're the handles. So we have a bread knife, not that we need it in carnivore or cutting meat. Got the boning knife, which is very important. Then we have a wonderful steak knife. So this is typically for the larger cuts of meat. So if you buy a whole ribeye, which we call it a cube roll here in Australia, got the steel to sharpen the knife. Then I've got another boning knife, and I'll tell you a little bit about this one later on. And this is a very interesting knife. It's called a palette knife. So if you're cooking hamburgers, you typically want to use this to then flip the burger over, or the beef patty. Got a fillet knife here for fish. I've got 3 types of chef's knives or cook's knives. 2 brands. One's at Victorinox or Vitrinox, and one is Wusthof Trident. One is Swiss, one is German. We've got a cleaver, obviously for cutting through bones. Got a paring knife. Got a turning knife, which is typically for vegetables. Got another steel here, which is for sharpening, which I typically use with my larger steak knife. And then we have the very important sharpening stone. So it's coarse and fine. And that's what I have.
Very good. So how often do you run your knives on the steel? Like every time you use them, or?
Yeah, so I will pass my knives over the steel every time I use them. Now, if I'm at work and I've got to step away from my bench, I typically will sharpen my knives once I go back to my chopping board. So, just to put it out there, a steel is not to sharpen your knives. It's just to keep the edge on the knife. To sharpen your knife, you need a stone.
Yeah, if you look at it under a microscope, knife blades have tiny little teeth on them that you can't really see with the naked eye. And when they're sharp, the teeth are basically like this. And over time, they spread like this. And when you run it down the steel, it straightens them back out. And you'll notice that the knife cuts very well. But eventually, all these little guys have to be reground, especially as they like break off, or they're so short that the steel can't straighten them out anymore. So then you use the stone to straighten them. Yep. So how often do you actually put your knives to the stone, Joe?
Every couple months. So maybe 3 to 4 months. It just depends how much I use them. And what I'm cutting with them.
Feel, or? Yeah,
definitely. So, you pass the knife over the steel, and if it still feels a little bit dull when you're cutting, then I'll pass it over the stone.
Excellent.
Yeah, I prefer. Yep.
Which one of those knives do you use the most?
I use the Vitrinox one the most, or Victorinox, only because it's easier to sharpen. It's a cheaper knife. So this is about $60 or $70 Australian. And this is my German one. This is my favorite knife out of all of them, which I don't really like. I used to use it quite a bit, but I don't use it as much now. This is about 300. When I bought this, was about $350 back in 1999. I bought this knife.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's still. This is my sharpest knife. It's crazy sharp. But yeah, I mean, for work, I do use this knife here, only because if you know, sometimes you're not at work, people tend to use your knives, and if they damage it, it doesn't really bother me.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to leave something too fancy laying around because you never know what happened to it. Somebody might try and open a can of olives, right?
Yes, like this one here. So this knife here was actually about an inch longer.
Yikes.
And I came into work one day and I found that it had been completely snapped off, and found out that one of the guys in the kitchen thought he would open up a tin of olives with it.
That's a bummer.
It was, but he learnt his lesson and didn't do it ever again.
Well, I'm a long ways from a professional chef, but I do cut a fair amount of meat. And so I find myself using the steel on my knives like only once a week or so. And then I probably only put them on the stone every couple of months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't have anything all that fancy. I use a knife like this one the most. This is actually just a set that came in a butcher block. I have two identical to this, and I have steak knives that match it. And I got a larger version of this. This is just sold under the Cuisinart brand, but this is chrome vanadium stainless steel, so it holds a pretty good edge and it holds up well. And I say, you know, if you've got a knife like this around already, this you don't need to go out and buy something fancy, especially if you're going to learn to sharpen. You know, because you don't want to scratch up a nice expensive or even just even a brand new knife. You know, you just got it, and it's easy to make mistakes. And then, you know, like you said, if you're not the only person in the kitchen, you never know what's going to happen to your knife.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, look, I've been at work before, and I've come in, and they've used my knife to cut hose, so a garden hose. And I said to them, "But why'd you use my knife for?" "Oh, it was the sharpest one in the kitchen." I said, "That's great, but it's not sharp anymore."
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you would want to get a knife that's easy to sharpen at home. I mean, you watch a YouTube video on how to sharpen. I mean, when you start getting into for example, the Wulstoff or the FDIC knives, which are from Germany, it's a much higher grade steel that they use, or material that they use to make the blade. They are much harder to sharpen, but the edge will stay on it sharper for a much longer period of time.
Yeah, I don't know how many generations this knife has been in the family. It's just carbon steel, kind of predates stainless steel, but it's a good hard steel, and it is actually pretty difficult to sharpen. As you can see, there's not a lot of blade left. I assume this started life as a boning knife, but it might have been a wider blade than that originally, because it's very, very, very old. But it's a good knife, and if you got something around like this, don't throw it away, because you could probably sharpen it and probably get a lot of use out of it. And a blade that small is really hard to get, so you might have something special that's going to work really good for boning.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's sometimes having a blade like, and this is pretty much the same. This was a much bigger blade, but this is what happens when you get it machined. They take off way too much from the blade. So, but it is good, because when you have to go around the joints there, it's quite easy to maneuver the knife. You don't have that big chunky blade to go around the bones. So it does serve its purpose.
Yeah, I've got one of yours. This is one of the knives you weren't crazy about. I've had this one for a long time. I bought this. A friend was giving me a whole tuna, and he needed a knife to cut it up with. And so I bought this. This is Brazilian Monadol. So
Mondial, yeah.
Mondial. So yeah, and these are notoriously hard to sharpen. I found out the hard way. So
Yeah.
if you really want to challenge yourself, get one of
Yeah.
these.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a few others around here. This is a stone that I use in the kitchen for sharpening my knives. You can see it says Sharp Pebble on it. This is not a particularly expensive stone. I think it's about $20 online. And it's got 400 grit on one side. So the lower number is going to be the coarser grit. And the other side is 1,000 grit. It's much finer. So, and this is what they call a soak stone. So you actually soak this in water before you use it. It's not meant to be used with oil. And it's not meant to just be wet. It's meant to actually be soaked. So that was a discussion you and I were having off camera for the last few days. Is I was talking to somebody about like how some stones are designed. Some are designed to use with oil, and some are designed to use with water, right? And in the kitchen, typically water is preferable, right? Is that what your experience has told you?
Yeah. I prefer. I mean, the stone that I've got is a non-oil stone, and the problem is that when you use oil or even soap, it will clog up the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to soak it in kerosene. I've even seen some chefs they'll put the stone on a burner and just burn out all the residue from the stone. But I do like the I do like to use water on my stone. I even like the feel of it when you're sharpening the knife. It just feels much nicer when using water compared to oil or soap.
Yeah, I do too. I sharpen my knives at the sink. I made this board to hold the stone, and it sits in the center. I have like a double sink in my kitchen, like
Nice.
most people. So this sits right there, and then I soak the stone. I could have the water running right there to rinse the knife off. I even put drain holes in this. I don't know if you can see them very well, but I have little conical drain holes,
Yeah.
so the water runs off into the sink, and then I can sharpen my knives in a nice, because the sink's like the perfect place. You got the water there, there's a light right overhead, and the way I sharpen a knife is I I put my fingertips right on the edge and feel how it engages the stone. That's how I learned to do it. I'm sure there's other techniques, but when you got your fingertips right there on the edge as you go across the stone, you could get a feel for what it's doing, and you want it to just barely bite the stone, without gouging the stone. And then of course, with your fingertips right there, you can keep nice even pressure on the blade as you go across the stone, and it helps you keep that angle correct, because knives are actually ground at different angles, which I'm sure Joe already knows. This has a continuous grind, so it's one flat surface on each side. Whereas some knives, like your fancier knives, they have several different angles to them, and you don't know exactly what that is, right? It could be 16 degrees, 26 degrees.
Yeah, you just pretty much work it out, don't you? I mean, the first time you sharpen your knife, you might not know, but eventually you work it out.
I brought a couple of samples of other sharpeners. This is a convenience type sharpener. It basically has a fine and a coarse slot on it, and you just draw the knife through it. This isn't half bad for somebody who doesn't want to buy a stone or doesn't want to take the time, but you won't get quite as good a sharpening for something like this. And you can scratch your blade with one of these. I've done it, and you can occasionally, if you're not careful, you can actually chip it, or you can chip the little stones inside, and then they scratch the hell out of your knife.
They damage the knife. Yeah, definitely.
This is go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, another way that I sharpen my knife is on the back of another knife. So, and typically, I don't know over there, but over here you'll see butchers do that.
Right.
They'll grab, yeah, 2 knives and just sharpen it like that. And for some reason, it just gives it, it makes it really sharp. I don't know what it is about the back of a knife.
It's kind of similar to using a steel. It's just a smoother, smoother surface.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to show, I don't remember where I got this, but this is supposedly a diamond stone. And really what it is there's industrial diamonds embedded in this metal surface. So, and this is probably not ideal for a kitchen unless you really got really scratched up knives already, because they have a tendency to not be very flat. They hold their form, unlike a natural stone. They don't wear very well, but they have a tendency not to, the abrasive surface isn't really regular enough. It's kind of cool because it has so many different grits on one little device, but I would save this for cruder stuff, like maybe garden tools or something, because I was disappointed in it when I tried it. And sorry to whoever might have given it to me as a gift. But
so what's your favorite knife?
Well, I don't have any. I've been putting off buying a nice knife because I just wanted to be confident about sharpening it by hand when I got one, and I'll probably get a Victorinox or something like that. I've actually been thinking about just making knives now that I'm stuck home with the COVID-19 quarantine. I was like, well, I'll just order up some steel, some 1095 or something, and make some knives. One of the problems I have is the handles are rarely as big as I like. I got a big hand, and I used to have arthritis. And then if I have to use my left hand's got all the scar tissue in it. So smaller handles are kind of a pain in the ass. So if I make myself a knife or if I buy another one, definitely gonna get one with as big a handle as I can find. So
fair enough. I mean, Wusthof make them. I'm just comparing. It's a fairly decent size handle. They're pretty cool. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, it's a good size handle.
Yeah, so I've still got a bit more room at the back.
Yeah, I have that problem with all the knives. I like to collect knives, and I find that knife handles in particular are a little short for my taste, and a little light on volume. So I like something that fills my hands, especially if I'm using for a long period of time.
Actually, if you want something really special, get yourself one of those Japanese knives.
Yeah,
they fold them like when they used to make the samurai swords, or like when they make the samurai swords. Yeah, they fold them, and you can pay $600-700 for a knife.
Yeah, well, my birthday's coming up at the end of the year, so yeah.
All right, so if anyone wants to chip in, we'll start a GoFundMe page.
I need a new knife fundme page. Yeah. All right. So you got any advice for somebody who's thinking about going out there and buying something for the first time?
Yeah, I would say buy a knife that's easier to sharpen. Buy a knife that, it's obviously not too expensive. Also, ask the people in the store, can I feel the knife? I just want to hold it in my hand because, this is a very, very well balanced knife. And it feels completely different to the Victorinox knife. So just ask, can I feel it? Is it easy to sharpen? Ask the store, tell the person in the store what your intentions for the knife are, a bit of an all-rounder, or is it specific to boning or slicing? And take it from there. And even ask them about sharpening stones, and if they might even offer a course in how to sharpen the knife.
I've been thinking recently too, I might just go around to like the secondhand stores and look and see what kind of kitchen knives they have, and then Maybe I'll find a good piece of steel, and then maybe I'll just put a bigger handle on it. So I'll make my own handle the way I like it. So.
Well, the thing is, Tom, that a lot of people don't know how to sharpen knives. So as soon as it's blunt, they go, it's no good, and they throw it in the bin. They buy themselves another one. So you might be able to find something special out there.
Well, yeah, speaking of that, one of the things that used to drive me crazy is everybody I lived with wouldn't sharpen a knife. They never even picked up the steel. But so they would always go to the bread knife because you could saw through anything with the bread knife, right? But the bread
Yep.
knife would always be dull, and then it wouldn't be any good for cutting bread anymore.
Yeah.
So now I don't eat bread. I don't worry about it as much, but it used to drive me crazy because everybody wanted to use the bread knife.
Well, I used to have apprentices at work that would use the bread knife to cut vegetables.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if I've got to cut bread at work, I use my chef's knife because it's that sharp. I can just cut through I can cut through bread.
Nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I sharpened my knife the other day, and I had a bit of time, so I took a lot of time doing it, and I made it a little bit too sharp. So, in a way, it's good because no one else wants to touch my knife. Everyone's shitting themselves, but yeah, I mean, you got to be careful.
Yeah, one of the things about sharpening a knife on a stone is once you get into the zone when you're doing it, it's kind of you kind of get in that mindset where you're feeling it and you're sharpening. I like to go through and sharpen several knives at once, and I kind of get that zen sort of in the zone feeling when I'm doing it and getting into it just right. So it can be kind of a soothing activity to sharpen the knives once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, typically I like to, for example, get a lemon, cut it before I sharpen the knife, and then know what to expect when it's finished, and then really take my time. So I might go 20 strokes on one side and 20 on the other, and I do that a couple of times on the coarse side, and then turn over the stone, and on the fine side, I'll do it again, 20 each side until I think it's ready. And then I'll get another lemon and I cut that in half. And if it needs more work, I keep going. If it doesn't, I stop, wash my knife with hot soapy water, and then pass it over the steel.
Very nice. All right. Well, great. You got any other parting words for people out there who might need a sharp knife to cut their fresh meat with?
Always have a box of Band-Aids around just in case.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So, and if you're really worried about sharpening a nice kitchen knife or something for the first time, just go get your machete, practice on that because it's already probably full of nicks and it's half rusted and it probably needs some attention anyways, right? And who's gonna know?
That's it.
All right. All right, man. Well, thanks. It was great. I hope people out there enjoy this. Please subscribe to the channel. Pass this on to folks who might benefit from it. Let us know in the comment what you think. Let us know what your favorite kitchen knife is. Let us know if you sharpen yourself or if you just buy a new knife every time it gets dull. But thanks for watching, and everybody out there feel better.